Um, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on my personal story. I don't want to do it in the context of sort of making you hear my autobiography. The premise behind that is it has never been more difficult, I believe, to navigate a career, to get liftoff. It's extremely difficult circumstances. And I want to just tell you sort of my story, why I did what I did, what worked and what didn't work. I'm about 10 minutes on that. Second, I want to introduce you to a really cool business called Millenniata, which is the company that I'm running right now, and some of the issues we face. There's a very colorful story. It's an amazing company with a really interesting past that I think that you'll be able to learn a lot from. And then three, I want to share what I call must-haves in transforming a great idea into a sustainable, valuable company. And I hope to be able to do that in the last 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll go through a number of slides pretty quickly, but I'd love to have as many of you that would like to come to the Q&A after, because I think I agree with this terrific guy whose name I can't remember, mentioned that the Q&A would be great. So I'd like to read this. Peter Senge wrote a great book called The Fifth Discipline. He said, when you ask people about what it is like being a part of a great team, what is most striking is the meaningfulness of the experience. People talk about being part of something larger than themselves, of being connected, of being generative. It becomes quite clear that for many, their experiences as part of truly great teams stand out as singular periods of life lived to the fullest. Some spend the rest of their lives looking for ways to recapture that spirit. That is so incredibly true, and I hope that you have the opportunity to be a part of really great teams. And I believe I've gotten addicted to this. Being a part of a great team, building something, particularly when you succeed at building something, it is extraordinarily valuable. And being an entrepreneur is really just that. Building something against significant odds. So here is my story very quick. And again, bear with me just for a quick second. I grew up born in Salt Lake City, went to East High School. I grew up a BYU hater. It was bred into me to despise this university, served a mission in Japan, really grew to love this university, came back, transferred. My friends couldn't believe it. And then went and worked for a company called Accenture, which at that time was called Anderson Consulting. I did that for two reasons. The primary reason was that was a company that invested in its people in an extraordinary way, and it had a great brand and was very, very credible. It was a very prestigious company. Then I went and worked for a company by the name of Trammell Crow. It's the largest real estate developer in the country. It was written up in the late 80s, when I joined it as one of the top 5 companies in America to work for. And it had more millionaires per capita. And it was just an extraordinary, for me, I went because when I was a consultant, I was at Frito-Lay's world headquarters, and I heard one of the managers say, these consultants don't have any experience. They come in and tell us what to do. They don't know what they're talking about. I heard this was a side conversation, and I thought, that's exactly right. I went there to have a sort of a hardcore finance and operations experience, fabulous experience. I call that my internship phase, which I put simply from the age 19 to age 33. It's a long time of preparing to enter in what I would call phase 2, which is, I call it the contribution phase or harvest phase. It's not when you're 24. It's probably sometime in your mid-30s if you really choreograph your life well so that you can contribute, and then what I hopefully you can harvest nicely as well. I went and worked for a Covey Leadership Center. It was because I loved it, and I was passionate about it, and I was good at that, which was a consulting business that, as Dr. Little mentioned, merged with Franklin Quest. Then in 1999, this was a time which was extraordinary in terms of the internet growing, and the opportunities were extraordinary, and I wanted to be a part of building something. I gave up a very prestigious role, a lot of good income, and did a startup. And I won't tell you any of this story other than that it was something like this. Funding, Within 3 months of funding, we were dead. A month after, we resurrected it. We worked for free. We sold it and got married to a disastrous spouse. I won't give you anything more. The spouse wasn't what they represented them to be. We got divorced. We grew like crazy. Then we sold it again, all in about a 3 or 4 year period. It was a rough, rough journey. This entrepreneurial thing, as you all know, is a very, very rough thing. It looks, what we see is the mythological great success stories, but it's rough. So make sure that if you want to do it, you go into it with open eyes. Then I was hired as the CEO, and we got great results here. This company recruited me. It's a fantastic story. I was only the CEO for about a year, and we sold it to Hewlett-Packard. And we sold it in spring of 2008. And if you know what happened in late 2008, that was really nice timing. And we had a really tough challenges in deciding whether or not we were going to do it. But it turned out to be a really, really great choice. Then I stayed with Hewlett-Packard, and I put healing here. And I just want you to know there's a rhythm to building things. And I needed to heal some nerve endings. Stayed there at Hewlett-Packard, which was really intense and very demanding. But it was healing because it wasn't the intensity of life and death on the line, which is what the world of sort of building companies is. And then I became the CEO of Family Link really out of responsibility. I was on the board. The company was struggling. And I consented to come in and run it, which I hoped to be a 6-month adventure. It ended up being closer to a 2-year adventure. And we were successful, fortunately, in turning this around and then selling, as Dr. Little said. And right now, I'm the CEO of a company called Millenniata. If I could just put this insert in, I am not a visionary. In any of these companies that I've been leading, I have not been the idea person. I've been the person that is responsible for executing. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but when you craft a great team, having that visionary person generally, as you all know, is not the person that's good at executing. The skills and competencies with being a visionary are usually the exact opposite of what it takes to really tactically execute. I've been the executor, and that's what I like to do. There's a lot of creativity in architecting turnarounds, but it's a different skill set. So what worked and what didn't? Very, very quickly, I'll just say all of my choices built well on each other. It's a very, very disheveled, scattered path. But for me, early on, and I'll spare you the details, early on, each one of the choices led to another one. When I was hired by Trammell Crow, it was because I was at Accenture. When I was recruited by Covey Leadership Center, it was because I was at Trammell Crow. Because of the things that I had done at Covey Leadership Center, the startup team that we did it together with had really a lot of interest in my competency. LogoWorks hired me because of what I had done at the previous company. And there's this theme that you're going to want to create, and it's very simple, which is everything you do, you must create great results, and you have this pattern of excellence. And so ultimately, when you sit in front of partners to either start something or to be hired, you get to say, look, don't worry. With me, what you're going to get is a pattern of excellence. I will succeed. It's what Ann Romney said about Mitt Romney in the Republican National Convention, if you saw that, when she said, this man will not fail. I am definitely not in the league of Mitt Romney in any remote sense, but I will tell you, if you have a pattern of excellence, not just professional excellence, but in everything that you do, it is a compelling value proposition to an employer, as well as, if I don't mind saying, to a potential spouse. And I'm not talking about results, I'm talking about being compelling is what you need to be. So my choices built nicely, hopefully built some competence, hopefully helped build some good brand, credibility, external validation, which was a good thing, had a good income, and created this pattern of excellence. What didn't work for me, which was rough, was it lacked focus. I was a master of few things, maybe nothing. I relied way too much on heroics and good fortune because there wasn't good choreography. There wasn't a clear path. I went from consulting to real estate, back to consulting, into technology. Master of mediocrity. There's real challenges with that. It's a fear that, high risk of being irrelevant in middle age. And let me tell you, it's very easy when you're in your mid-40s or 50 to be irrelevant. And it's something that you should think about because it's just around the corner, I promise you. I feel exactly the way you do. I feel just as young as you, and I am so not. So here's what worked. Here's what I'd sort of summarize. Relationships and reputation matter more than you can ever imagine. And I mean the relationships that you're creating right now. This is a big university. Don't dismiss the relationships. Work hard to develop those relationships. They will pay off for you in a very significant way, as well as the relationships with people that you work with. You know this. Just don't underestimate it. Don't dismiss it. The people that you're with right now. Results and pattern of excellence is the most important thing. It's the only indicator of future success is past success. When you do an interview, the only statistically reliable sample is, I have a pattern of excellence. And if you can say that, it's the only statistically valid predictor of future success. It's a very, very big deal. You all have it or you wouldn't be in these chairs. Money matters less when you really need it. It matters more when you don't. What I mean by that is, when do you need money the very, very most? When you're early in your career. Unfortunately, you better treat money as the fourth or fifth requirement. It's the least important criteria. Here's your criteria for making your decisions. Growth and development, number one, by far. Number two, credibility and external branding and validation. Number two. Number three, relationships and network, who you're going to work for, because 80% of what you learn after the university is going to come from the people that you're around, and most importantly, from the person that you work for. You can work for a great company and a terrible person, and you don't want to do it. You can work for a average company, an extraordinary person, and it's just who you work for is a really, really big deal in your career. And then fourth, your financial remuneration. And lastly, I'll just simply say this. Be a doctor of something. I'm not talking about academically or an MD or a PhD, but you better be an expert in something. This is the only quote I'll give you from me today. I made this up for this presentation. Being a generalist in the 21st century is a very tough road. It means less relevance, contribution, remuneration, and opportunity. Unfortunately, you live in a time when you must be good. You must be a doctor of something. And I'm not talking about a doctor at 25 or 26 or 28 or 30. I'm talking about a doctor at the same age that you would become a medical doctor. I'm always giving this lecture to my son. Don't be scared of medicine. Don't be scared of this. Don't be scared of anything, because it's all really, really hard. It's just as hard as medical school. It's just as hard as law school to be good at something. And that path of growth up until the age 30 or 35, and by the way, you still do it. You just do it less. So that's that. Here's Millenniata. Millenniata is a really interesting company. It was started about 5 years ago. Has a lot to do with BYU. It actually came out of, there's 3 professors that created a technology that came out of BYU. And I was meeting with Mike Alder, the head of the Technology Transfer Office. This company is built on BYU technology. BYU owns a significant part of this company. Has a very colorful past that I won't tell you too much about other than this. About 5 years ago, it was created, raised about $17 million from about 400 people. Because of some strategic missteps, well-intended, I'll just suggest well thought through, burned through about $17 million. When ships go down and things get hard, things get a little bit difficult. This company had a lot of challenges, a lot of fights, a lot of difficulties. And so about 2 years ago, a guy that preceded me named Scott Shumway came in and really made some different strategic choices and went through a lot of slogging and a lot of sacrifice and an enormous amount of hard work with a group of people, and really turned a ship that was like this and just pulled it out. And when you pull out of smashing on the ground, it's hard to pull it out, and it takes a lot of time. And so what we do is this, is we aspire to be the world leader in permanent data storage technology and solutions. So what that means is our lives are full of digital content. All the ways that you store that data are temporary. Let me show you this, if this works, a short little introductory, a couple little things about our technology, and hopefully this will work. There's one more, I think, that I've got right here that I'm also going to show you. So this is, our first product is an optical disc. This is how current technology basically infuses in a dye layer that erodes over time. What our technology does is it has a more powerful laser in a synthetic stone layer that actually engraves onto the optical disc. So it essentially makes it so that it theoretically lasts forever. And I think that there is one more. So this is what happens. Essentially what our vision as a company is to create digital content and storage solutions that enable that content to last for a long, long time. Our first product is a DVD that we currently sell, and essentially what happens is a standard DVD has an organic layer, and you infuse with a laser on that organic layer, and it erodes and corrupts over time. And you saw in this little piece a traditional hard drive. All current forms of data storage essentially get corrupted or erode over time. Hard drives, optical discs, even tape, everything. And it's an interesting thing because we don't think about it at all. What we're always thinking about is capacity, how much we can store, and the performance of that how quickly we can get access to that data. And so what our technology does is there's basically this synthetic stone, and it's basically as if we're engraving it onto this optical disc, and this is what happens. Quite dramatic, isn't it? I mean, favorite part again. So, that is a little bit over the top. You guys react the same way that I do. It makes me feel better. So you get the idea. That's the business. And we've been around for 5 years. And the strategy, I mean, this is a very compelling story. It's a really cool technology, and you can see why you could raise a bunch of money like this is going to be, sort of be earth-shattering. And in our particular case, I know now you guys are all thinking about, well, wait a minute, the cloud, you know, this is optical disk. I don't ever use my optical drive. I haven't used my optical drive in 3 years. We're not trying to compete with the cloud. The cloud is for convenience and access. And you can do long-term storage in it, but you're going to have to pay for it. What we want to provide is the solutions that for certain people, they want to be able to store data. And it's usually photos and videos, which is really the only data that you care. Everything else you throw on Google Docs or you throw someplace else. But that data we want to be able to have people have a safe place. It's interesting right now that if we don't take, if any of us now, all of our lives are digital, in 50 years, none of us would really even exist. Because all of that data, all of that, I mean, up to this point, the best archival medium is paper. And we're living in this really interesting digital age. And so what we're trying to do is provide that solution. So our strategy is this. I'd love to be able to, if you come after, I'd love to be able to talk about what the original leadership team essentially said. We're going to go to market directly on our own. We're going to be in the hardware business because you have to have a special writer. There's a modification to the optical drive in the PC. It needs a special optical drive to engrave on this optical disc. And so they were going to be in the hardware business, and they were going to sell it all directly. It was a very, very bold play, and it had huge potential opportunity. Didn't work. Strategy didn't work. Burned through the money. And so the team made a different approach. And here's what they decided to do. They went with partners. So this happened before I got here. They signed up a company called Hitachi LG Data Storage, which is the largest manufacturer of optical drives. They sell optical drives. The optical drive is what's in all PCs. It's the reader and the writer. And with some very minor modifications, they signed up that partner. Signed up Acer, a company called Rytec, just finishing a thing with iMation. And we essentially said, okay, instead of doing everything ourselves, we're going to do it through our partners. We're going to set up a network of resellers. It was a less lucrative strategy, higher probability of success, and then most importantly, we get tied to big partners such as Acer. So this is a few slides from Acer. September 15th of this year, they're going to launch these new family of devices. And inside of these devices, they have our what we call M-Ready optical drives that will write onto our disks. It's really a cool thing. So what they say is, our PC is differentiated in the marketplace because it has this technology. We can, with our device, you can save your data and have it last 1,000 years. So essentially, they're taking our feature and selling it through their device, and they differentiate it. And we're getting this extraordinary traction. We've just launched with Dell Europe the same thing. I'll give you a couple of illustrations. So on every Acer device that comes out in September, we'll have on their bezel this thing called M-Disk Ready. It's a really cool feature. It's great branding. This is a palm sticker that'll be on all of their devices. This is the Dell configuration page that says, choose the optical drive that's M-Disk Ready. You're not particularly interested in our packaging, but what we're also doing, so how we're going with our marketing, instead of trying to build our own brand, we're letting the big optical disc providers be the brand. So this will be the iMation, Millenniata, M-Disk. We're going with some other resellers, a company called Rytec, a company called Platinum, and others. So our first strategy is to build this brand in the consumer segment, okay? Our second strategy is, and I know I'm going quickly, very, very deliberately, our second strategy is to disrupt the enterprise archival data storage segment. Let me give you a quick lesson on how enterprises store data. So BYU creates a massive amount of data. Every bank, every institution, every large government agency creates a massive amount of data. That data needs to be stored. How do they store it now, generally? A whole bunch of you know this. They store it on tape. Tape has a very short life cycle, years. Depending upon the conditions, usually less than 10 years. Depending on how concerned they are about it, they sometimes rotate them out every 2 to 3 years. The tape is getting corrupted, etc., depending, again, on the conditions. What we want to do, and are doing with a company called Hitachi LG, is we're introducing this thing. By the way, when I say we're introducing, Hitachi LG has this thing called an optical library for archiving. This is a very, very cool strategy. This is a very difficult picture of a 19-inch set of storage in a typical data center. And what these are right here are small, if you can see on this bottom corner, are basically cartridges with 500 optical discs. So this is a cartridge with 500 optical discs that slide in. This optical library, so this is cartridges. So this has 4,000 optical discs on one rack. 16 optical disk drives. Each optical disk, these will have to be Blu-ray, will hold 100 gig each. And so the idea is, it's a really exciting strategy to disrupt this tape storage business by providing this value proposition. Your operating costs for your data center go way, way down. Your CO2 emissions go way down, which also means cost. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal, very interesting. 1.5% of all power is being consumed by data centers worldwide. The power, it's just an extraordinary amount of power. And that is a very, very destructive thing to the planet and to these big data providers. That's a big deal to them. Longevity is a huge thing, and accessibility. So tape, the way the data is accessed, it's low performance and poor access. It's all for archiving. So you can, so this is the idea of creating a very, what we hope will be a very, very disruptive technology in a multi-billion-dollar industry. So our big play is, can we disrupt this enterprise space? The Blu-ray M-Disc, our prototype is done. We hope to be to market by first quarter of next year. So I'll just summarize by sharing these issues. We have till 4:20. Okay. Our greatest challenges are building awareness on permanence. In other words, do people care? Are they aware? The truth is, the vast majority of you have never thought about the longevity of your data. Don't think I don't know that. You haven't. You've got other things to be. But when you lose it, and when you have 20,000 photos of your children, you'll start to think about it. But it's a tough message to create. Recapitalizing a company that was capitalized and went through difficult times, it's very, very difficult. Righting the company after poor corporate governance and strategic missteps, it's a really big challenge. Turnarounds are very, very difficult. I'll just simply say the solution, an enormous amount of sacrifice, effort, and slogging. Slogging is just grinding through it over a long period of time. Fixing the strategy, executing, settling the legal issues. We had a whole bunch of legal issues. As of last Friday, we've settled all those legal issues. Providing enormous transparency. Remember this thing. If you ever have shareholders or if you ever try to raise money, hold up a lantern to the problems and challenges of the business. Our intuition is to hide them. You will lose an enormous amount of credibility if you try to hide the challenges. Every company, like every person, and I say this in the most kind way, is messed up. Emphasis on the companies being messed up. You all just have minor defects. But we all have enormous challenges, and to act that we don't, especially when you're raising money and running companies, the real people see right through it. So holding up a lantern to those challenges gives you the confidence that gives people the confidence, your stakeholders the confidence that you're aware and that you can do something about that. And then shareholder support. I want to share in closing these few things. And what I'd like to do is just kind of call this, if you ever want to build a company, I want to share just 3 or 4 things, really critical things that I think would be valuable for you to make sure that you have in place. 4:20? I know what happens at 4:20. It's literally like, you know, it's like the world came to an end. I mean, it's like we are done. So I realize this isn't like my company when I say we're going to be done at 4:20 and it's 4:50 and we're still going. So I know we are done at 4:20, right? We are done. Okay. So here's what I'd like to share is these are the must-haves, and we're not going to talk about any of these things. And these are big, 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 huge things. There has to be a real market for your product or service and a real need. And when I say a real need, I'm talking about a real need, not a, hey, I have a solution or I have a service, and now I'm going to go look for a problem. So many times we're sort of, he who's good with a hammer makes everything a nail, and we go around and we try to create a problem that our service or our product works. And so find something, solve a real problem. Capital is a huge thing. Competence is a huge thing. That's market referenced. Then that means that it's a strategy grounded in the realities of the marketplace, that you have a valid business model, which is incredibly difficult, that you differentiate yourself from the competitors, and a whole bunch of other things. So these are things that we're not going to talk about. In other words, the stars need to align in a fairly significant way for you to have a reasonable probability of success. It's a wonderful, wonderful challenge. But the accelerators are these things. If you will have these in place, I think that your probability of success goes way, way up. 1, the right team. And of course that's the right team. Specifically what I mean is a team that has high trust. Trust is the cornerstone for high performance. And from my, close to decade at Covey Leadership Center, trust creates innovation, risk-taking, speed. If you want to read a fabulous book, read Stephen M. R. Covey's book called The Speed of Trust. It's a fantastic, fantastic book that you should all read if you ever really want to start something. Different competencies and skills. Your probability of succeeding by doing something with a friend probably will go down, in my opinion, because friendship is not the good basis to be the basis to start a company. It's fun to do it with a friend. What I would suggest is that you make friends with people that have different competencies, but don't start something with someone that's a close friend because they're probably too much like you. I'm not saying that we don't have friends that are different from us. I'm saying we tend to be friends with people that are similar to us. And for me, in every one of these enterprises where we've had great success, I've always had a partner that I've trusted in a very high, with a high degree of trust, but it's been extremely different than me. Extremely different. Balance naivete with naive belief with reality, and this is really, really hard. Is the idea of being delusional, and that's a tough word. And it takes a little bit of that. Let's call it being naive and hopeful, believing. But it's difficult. We have this gift as people, and that is we believe what we seek to believe. We see what we seek to see. We have this ability to believe the things that we want to believe. And it's an enormously difficult thing to then say, okay, how do I have that belief and hope that we can do this, but be grounded in reality at the same time? And you can hold those two things together. It's just incredibly difficult. I think a lot of it has to do with having the right people. And so believe in the impossible, but being grounded in paranoia. And paranoia is the right word. Unfortunately, it's a tough way to live. But the people who are Andy Grove, the old CEO of Intel, said, you know, something about I just lost it, but it basically, you know, only the paranoid survive. And it's very true. Build for value, not to sell. So don't build a company with the intention of selling it. You will make the wrong decisions, you will do things short term, and you won't create the really great value. And then execution solves everything. Execution, getting results, solves everything. And if I could close with this, this is not, I'm not going to tell you the emotional story. This is, though, the most important thing that I will say today. And I want to share this very simple execution model. If you're ever leading a company or leading a team, it's such a simple model. And it's simply this. One, a clear and simple strategy. You saw our strategy. It's 3 things. For the next year, this is what we're doing. Boom, boom, boom. And that's the Constitution. And if it falls out of that, we don't do it. And there's a sequencing to that. And we're all rallied around the same things. And we have very clear roles in stewardship. So that when anything falls into the organization, there's somebody that falls to. Because when you create clear roles, that Bob and Susie and Dick all have clear roles, you can then demand leadership from everybody. If the roles aren't clear of who owns what, everybody's managing everything and no one's leading. And in order to succeed, you have to have somebody, you have to have people that are leading their stewardships across the organization. If they are, and making decisions. So you demand leadership from all levels of stewardship, and then you translate this strategy into simple deliverables. And I'm not talking about 10 points. I'm talking about every single month, everybody in the organization has 3, no more than 5. The mind does not have the ability to focus on many things at the same time. We have a finite amount of time, and we have a finite amount of mind share, which is the ability to focus on certain things. It's very finite. So you take 3 to 5 things and you say, we are going to say no to everything. We call this, I apologize for saying this, but we call this, which kittens are you going to drown? Which is a terrible, terrible way, but it works because saying no is incredibly difficult. Enemy of the best is the good. You have to say no to the good. That's a very, very hard thing to do.